Cole's hands shake as he cuts the last rope. $500. That's what Jesse's worth to the men riding hard toward his ranch right now. He has 3 days to choose: the land he bled 15 years to build, or the man who made him believe love was possible. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The dust had barely settled when Cole Hartwell first laid eyes on the new ranch hand. The sun hung low over the Montana plains, painting everything gold and shadow, and there in the barn doorway stood a figure that made Cole forget he was holding a branding iron. The stranger was young, maybe 22, with hands that had never known hard labor, and eyes that held something Cole recognized from his own mirror: fear, hunger, desperation. But beneath all that, something else. Something that made Cole's chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. Cole had been alone for 15 years. 15 years since the war had ended, and he'd come back to find his family gone. Fever had taken his mother while he was away. His father had drunk himself to death the winter after. The girl he'd planned to marry had moved east with a banker's son. Couldn't wait for a soldier who might never return. So Cole had taken what little money he had, bought this land, and built a life from nothing. He'd told himself it was enough. The work, the land, the solitude. He'd convinced himself that wanting anything more was dangerous, that needing anyone was weakness, that the safest way to live was to never let anyone close enough to hurt you. But then this stranger appeared, standing in the doorway like an answer to a question Cole had been too afraid to ask. The boy stepped forward, hat in hand, shoulders trying to look broader than they were. "I heard you might need help with the harvest, mister." Cole set down the iron, wiping his hands on his work pants. His throat had gone dry. "That's so." The stranger nodded. "I can work. I learn fast." His voice carried the accent of the East. Educated, refined, everything about him screamed that he didn't belong out here in the wild country. Yet here he stood, desperation etched in every line of his body. Cole studied him. The soft hands, the clean shirt now dusty from travel, the way he stood like he was used to being looked at but not touched. This wasn't a ranch hand. This was someone running. From what, Cole didn't know, but he recognized the look of a man with nowhere else to go. He'd seen it in his own reflection often enough. The sensible thing would be to send him away. Cole Hartwell had built this ranch alone after the war, kept his head down, his business his own. He didn't need complications, didn't need questions, didn't need a boy with eyes like morning fog looking at him like Cole was the answer to a prayer. But Cole also remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to have nowhere to turn, to stand at the edge of giving up. And something in those gray-blue eyes called to something deep inside him that he'd thought was dead. "You got a name?" "Jesse. Jesse Carmichael." The name hung in the air between them. Cole noticed the way Jesse's hands trembled slightly, the way his eyes darted to the horizon as if expecting someone to appear, the way he held himself like a man ready to run at the first sign of danger. Cole had questions, 100 of them, but he'd learned long ago that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was not ask, not force a man to reveal what he was running from, just give him space to breathe, space to heal, space to become whoever he needed to be. Cole turned back to the forge, not trusting himself to hold that gaze any longer. Bunkhouse is out back. Work starts at dawn. Pay is fair. Rules are simple. You do your job, you keep your head down, and you don't ask questions I don't want to answer. He paused, then added, "And I don't ask questions you don't want to answer either." Jesse's breath caught. It was barely audible, but Cole heard it. Heard the relief in that single exhale. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet." Cole kept his eyes on the forge. Work's hard. Days are long. And if you're running from something, this land won't hide you forever. Jesse's voice came quiet. "I'm not looking to hide forever. Just long enough to figure out who I'm supposed to be." Cole understood that, better than this boy could know. He gave a short nod. "Fair enough." Jesse hesitated, then asked, "The other hands? They won't." Cole finally looked at him again, whatever his gaze steady. They won't what? Ask questions. Judge. Jesse's throat worked as he swallowed. Make trouble. The ranch hands here keep to themselves, Cole said flatly. They've all got their own stories, their own reasons for being in the middle of nowhere. Long as you pull your weight, they won't bother you. And if they do, Cole's hand moved to rest on the rifle leaning against the forge. They answer to me. Jesse's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded. The message was clear. Cole Hartwell protected what was his, and if Jesse worked here, that protection extended to him. Thank you, Jesse said again, softer this time. Cole just grunted and turned back to his work. But when Jesse started walking toward the bunkhouse, shoulders squared against the setting sun, Cole found himself watching, found himself noticing the way the evening light caught in the boy's dark hair, the lean strength in his frame beneath the dusty clothes, the proud set of his spine despite the fear Cole knew was eating him alive. Cole watched until Jesse disappeared into the bunkhouse, then forced himself to focus on the iron cooling in the forge. He reheated it, shaped it, worked the metal until his arms ached and his mind went quiet. But even then, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted, that by letting Jesse Carmichael stay, he'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Cole worked until full dark, then made his way to the main house. It wasn't much. 2 rooms, a kitchen, a porch that creaked. But it was his. No one else's name on the deed. No one else's ghosts walking the halls. Just his and the silence he'd made peace with. Except tonight, the silence felt different. Heavier, like it was waiting for something. Cole poured himself a whiskey and sat on the porch watching the bunkhouse. A single lamp burned in the window. He imagined Jesse in there, probably not sleeping. Probably lying awake wondering if he'd made the right choice, wondering if this place would be safe, wondering if Cole Hartwell could be trusted. Cole took a long drink and made himself a promise. Whatever Jesse was running from, whatever secrets he carried, Cole wouldn't pry, wouldn't push, would just give him honest work and a place to lay his head. It was more than Cole had been given when he'd come back from the war, more than most men got in this hard country. It would have to be enough, but even as Cole told himself that, he knew he was lying. Knew that the moment Jesse had walked into his line of sight, something had woken up inside him, something hungry, something that had been sleeping so long he'd forgotten it existed. Want, need, the ache for connection that no amount of solitude could quite kill. Cole drained his glass and went inside, but sleep didn't come easy, and when it finally did, his dreams were full of gray-blue eyes and a voice asking, "Who am I supposed to be?" The next morning came hard and fast. Cole woke before dawn, as always, and made his way to the barn. The ranch hands were already stirring. Old Tom was at the water pump. The younger men were seeing to the horses, and there, standing uncertainly by the fence, was Jesse. He'd changed into work clothes. Someone must have loaned them to him. They were too big. The sleeves rolled up to expose forearms that would tan and strengthen with time. His hair was damp, like he'd washed at the pump, and his eyes found Cole immediately, questioning, waiting for direction. Cole felt something twist in his chest. The boy looked so young in the early morning light, so out of place, and yet there was something determined in the set of his jaw. Something that said he wouldn't quit, wouldn't run, not yet. "You ever worked horses?" Cole asked, his voice rough from sleep. Jesse shook his head. "No, sir, but I can learn." Cole considered him. Most ranch work required strength Jesse didn't have yet, required knowledge of cattle and land and 100 small things that kept a place running. But horses were different. Horses responded to patience, to gentle hands, to someone who could read fear and offer comfort. "You're not afraid of them?" Cole asked. Jesse glanced at the horses in the corral, then back at Cole. "I'm afraid of most things, but not horses." Something in Cole's chest loosened. "All right, come with me." He led Jesse to the corral, where a young mare stood, skittish and wild-eyed. She'd been brought in from the open range, never been broken, never been gentled. The other hands had tried and failed. Now she just stood there, trembling whenever anyone got close. "This is Tempest," Cole said. "She needs someone patient, someone willing to take their time. Think you can handle that?" Jesse watched the mare, his expression thoughtful. "What happened to her?" "Found her caught in wire fencing. Tore her up pretty bad. We got her free, patched her up, but she doesn't trust humans anymore. Can't blame her." Jesse stepped closer to the fence, moving slow. The mare's ears flicked back, but she didn't bolt. "You think she can learn to trust again?" Jesse asked quietly. Cole watched him, watched the careful way he approached, the gentleness in his movements. "Everyone can learn to trust again," Cole said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Just takes the right person showing them it's safe." Jesse turned to look at him then, and Cole saw understanding flash in those gray-blue eyes. They weren't just talking about the horse anymore. For a long moment they stood there, the morning sun climbing higher, the ranch waking up around them, and between them, an understanding forming. Fragile, unspoken, but there. "I'll take care of her," Jesse said finally. "I promise." Cole nodded. "Work gloves are in the barn. Take your time. No rush." And Jesse. He waited until the boy looked at him again. "If you need anything, if anyone gives you trouble, you come find me. Understood?" Jesse's throat worked. "Yes, sir." Cole forced himself to turn away, forced himself to walk back to his work. But he was aware, with every step, of Jesse behind him. Aware of the promise he'd just made. Aware that he'd just done something dangerous. He'd just told Jesse Carmichael that he mattered, that he was under Cole's protection, that he wasn't alone. And in doing so, Cole had admitted something to himself. He wasn't as dead inside as he'd thought, wasn't as immune to connection, wasn't as safe behind his walls as he'd believed, because one look at a desperate stranger had been enough to crack those walls. And Cole had the sinking feeling that before this was over, they'd crumble completely. He just hoped they both survived what came after. That first week, Jesse Carmichael proved himself in ways Cole hadn't expected. The soft hands blistered, then calloused. The uncertain movements became sure. The boy who'd shown up looking half-starved started filling out his shirt in ways that made Cole's jaw clench every time he caught sight of him across the corral. But it was the small things that undid Cole's carefully built walls. The way Jesse's face lit up when he finally got a stubborn horse to trust him. The sound of his laugh, rare but genuine, when one of the older hands told a joke at supper. The quiet concentration in his eyes when Cole showed him how to properly mend a fence line. And the way Jesse looked at him, like Cole was something more than just a ranch boss. Like he saw past the scars and the silence to something Cole had buried years ago. It happened on a Thursday, 3 weeks after Jesse arrived. They were in the barn, restacking hay bales that had shifted in the night. The space was close, thick with dust and heat and the smell of dried grass. Cole reached for a bale at the same moment Jesse did. Their hands touched. It was nothing, a brush of calloused palm against calloused palm. But Jesse froze. Cole froze. And in the golden shafts of light streaming through the barn slats, Cole saw everything he'd been trying to ignore reflected in Jesse's face. The want, the fear, the desperate need to be seen. Cole pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. Jesse. The name came out rough. "We should." Jesse's voice was barely a whisper. "Please don't send me away." Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. "I wasn't going to." "Then what were you going to say?" "That I can't." Cole swallowed hard, fighting the urge to close the distance between them. "That this, whatever this is, it's not." He couldn't finish, because Jesse had stepped closer, close enough that Cole could see the pulse jumping in his throat, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin. "You feel it too," Jesse said. It wasn't a question. Cole's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Doesn't matter what I feel." Jesse's eyes searched his face. "Why not?" "Because I'm twice your age. Because you work for me. Because men like us don't get to." "Don't get to what?" Jesse's voice cracked. "Don't get to want? Don't get to feel?" The words hung between them like smoke. Cole knew he should step back, should end this conversation before it went somewhere neither of them could return from. But Jesse's hand came up, trembling, and touched Cole's chest, right over his heart. "I've been alone my whole life," Jesse whispered, "pretending to be something I'm not, running from anyone who might see the truth. And then I came here and you looked at me like I was worth something, like I wasn't broken." Cole's breath caught. "You're not broken." Jesse's eyes glistened. "Then why do I feel like I'm coming apart? Because maybe—" Cole's hand moved of its own accord, cupping Jesse's jaw. "Maybe that's what it feels like when you finally stop running." The barn seemed to hold its breath. Dust motes hung suspended in the golden light, and Cole Hartwell, who had spent 15 years building walls around his heart, felt every single one of them crumble. He didn't kiss Jesse, not then. That would come later, in the darkness of the bunkhouse when the other hands had gone to town. When Jesse knocked on his door with rain-soaked clothes and eyes that held every unspoken word between them. When Cole finally let himself reach for what he'd been denying since that first afternoon. But in the barn, in the honey-thick heat of a Montana summer, Cole made a different choice. He let his thumb trace the line of Jesse's jaw, felt the boy, no, the man, tremble beneath his touch, and he said the words he'd never said to anyone, "Stay." Jesse's breath hitched, even if, Cole's voice dropped to gravel, especially if. And when Jesse's eyes filled with tears of relief, of recognition, of finally being seen, Cole understood that some risks were worth taking, some walls were meant to fall, some loneliness was meant to end. That night, the other ranch hands noticed the change, noticed the way Jesse moved a little taller, the way Cole's permanent scowl had softened into something almost like peace. They didn't say anything. This was the West. A man's business was his own. But old Tom, who'd worked the ranch since Cole bought it, caught his eye across the supper table and gave the smallest nod. A nod that said, "I see you, I see him, and your secret's safe." Cole returned the nod, then let his gaze drift to where Jesse sat, laughing at something one of the younger hands said. And for the first time in 15 years, Cole Hartwell felt something he'd thought was lost to him forever: hope. The weeks that followed were careful. Stolen glances across the breakfast table, hands brushing when they passed tools, conversations that stretched long into the evening about nothing and everything. Cole taught Jesse how to read the weather in the clouds. Jesse taught Cole that silence didn't have to mean loneliness. They worked side by side, and slowly, the ranch hands stopped seeing them as boss and worker. They became something else, a unit, a team, partners in the truest sense. But it was the nights that Cole would remember forever. The knock on his door after the bunkhouse settled into sleep. The way Jesse would slip inside, rain-soaked or dust-covered or simply needing. The conversations in the dark about fathers who didn't understand. Towns that weren't safe. Dreams that seemed impossible. And the slow, careful way they learned each other. Not in the desperate, hurried way of men who thought they might not have tomorrow, but in the patient, thorough way of men who were building something meant to last. Cole learned that Jesse hummed when he was content, that his smile started in his eyes before it reached his mouth, that he had nightmares about the place he'd run from, and woke gasping for air until Cole's hand found his shoulder. Jesse learned that Cole had fought in a war he never talked about, that he'd loved once before and lost them to fever, that beneath the rough exterior was a man who believed in second chances even when he didn't think he deserved them. And together, in the darkness of Cole's small room, they learned what it meant to be seen, truly seen, for all their scars and secrets and fears, and found in each other something worth fighting for. It was old Tom who brought the news. 3 months after Jesse arrived, on a morning so cold their breath hung white in the air, Cole was in the barn when Tom appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grave. "Got word from town, man's been asking questions, about a young fellow matching Jesse's description." Cole's blood ran cold. "What kind of man?" "The kind with a badge and a mean look. Says the boy's wanted for theft back east. Says there's a reward." Cole's hands clenched. "That true?" Tom shrugged. Don't know. Don't much care. But I figured you'd want to know before anyone else heard. Cole found Jesse in the north pasture, mending a section of fence. The morning sun caught the copper in his hair. And for a moment, Cole just watched him. This man who'd stumbled into his life and changed everything. Jesse looked up and his smile faded. What's wrong? We need to talk. They walked to the line shack, a small shelter at the far edge of the property. Inside, away from curious eyes and ears, Cole told him everything Tom had said. Jesse's face went white. It's not true. The theft? Jesse's hands trembled. My father. He's a banker back in Philadelphia. Important man. Respected. And when he found out about me, about what I am, he said I was dead to him. But that wasn't enough. He had to make sure I could never come back. Make sure I'd be arrested if I ever showed my face. Cole's jaw tightened. He framed you. Jesse's voice cracked. Claimed I stole from his bank. Had documents forged. Made sure every lawman between here and the Atlantic knew my name. I didn't steal anything, Cole. I just wanted to be free. Cole pulled him close, feeling Jesse shake against his chest. I believe you. But if there's a marshal asking questions, we have to run. Jesse pulled back. Both of us. Cole blinked. What? You think I'm leaving you here to face this alone? Jesse's eyes blazed. You think I'd let you throw away everything you built just because my father is a vindictive bastard? No, I'll go. Tonight. You'll forget you ever met me. Cole's hand shot out, gripping Jesse's shoulder. Like hell I will. But your ranch, it's just land. Jesse shook his head. It's your whole life. Cole's voice dropped to something raw. You're my life now. The words hung between them like a vow. Jesse's eyes filled with tears. Cole, we leave tonight. Cole said it like a decision already made. Take what we can carry. Head north into Canada. Start over. You'd do that. For me. Cole cupped Jesse's face in his rough hands. I'd do anything for you. And in that moment, Jesse Carmichael understood what it meant to be loved. Not for what he could pretend to be, but for exactly who he was. That night, under cover of darkness, they prepared. Cole gathered what money he'd saved, packed supplies, saddled 2 horses. Old Tom appeared as they were loading the saddlebags. Where you headed? Cole met his eyes. North. Tom nodded slowly. Figured. He pulled out a worn leather pouch. Take this. It's not much, but it'll help you get started. Cole's throat tightened. Tom, the old cowboy, held up a hand. You gave me a job when no one else would. Treated me fair when the world treated me like I was used up. Far as I'm concerned, that makes us square. He glanced at Jesse, then back at Cole. Besides, a man's got a right to live his life, even out here. Cole gripped his shoulder. Thank you. Tom tipped his hat. You boys be safe out there. And with that, he disappeared into the darkness. Cole and Jesse mounted their horses as the first stars appeared overhead. They took one last look at the ranch, at the life Cole had built, at the safety they were leaving behind. Jesse's voice was quiet. I'm sorry, don't be. Cole turned his horse north. We're gonna be fine. How do you know? Because. Cole reached across the space between their horses and took Jesse's hand. Because I've got you and you've got me, and that's all we need. They rode through the night, putting miles between themselves and the life Cole had known. The mountains rose dark against the star-filled sky, and the air grew colder as they climbed higher. But Cole didn't feel the cold, not with Jesse riding beside him, not with the future stretching out before them like an open road. As dawn broke over the peaks, painting the snow gold and pink, they stopped to rest the horses. Jesse slid from his saddle, legs stiff from the long ride. Cole caught him before he stumbled, and they stood there, breathing hard, watching the sun rise over a world that didn't know their names. Do you think we'll make it? Jesse asked. Cole tightened his arms around him. We already have. They stood in the morning light, 2 men who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd chosen love over safety, freedom over fear. And as they mounted their horses again, heading deeper into the wild country, where a man could be whoever he chose to be, Cole Hartwell understood something fundamental. Home wasn't a place, it was a person, and he'd just found his. 6 months later, in a small valley north of the border, they built a cabin. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, a good roof, and a stone fireplace that kept them warm through the brutal winter. They worked from dawn to dusk, building something that was theirs. No one questioned 2 men living alone in the wilderness. The few neighbors they had were too busy surviving to worry about other people's business. And slowly, carefully, they built a life. Cole taught Jesse how to hunt, how to track, how to read the forest the way he'd once read the prairie. Jesse taught Cole how to read books he'd brought in his saddlebag, how to see beauty in small things, how to laugh again. They made mistakes, had arguments that ended with slammed doors and cold shoulders, faced winters so harsh they wondered if they'd survive. But they also had mornings where they woke to fresh snow and Jesse's head on Cole's shoulder. Evenings by the fire where they didn't need words. Nights where the world shrank to just the 2 of them and nothing else mattered. One spring morning, a year after they'd fled, Cole found Jesse standing at the edge of their property, staring south toward the life they'd left behind. "You miss it?" Cole asked, coming to stand beside him. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. "I miss not having to hide. I miss knowing we're safe." He turned to look at Cole. "But I don't miss who I was before I met you." Cole took his hand. "We're safe here. I know." Jesse squeezed his fingers. "And I'm exactly who I want to be." They stood together as the sun climbed higher, 2 men who'd risked everything for the chance to love freely. And though the world beyond their valley might never understand, though they'd always have to be careful, they had something most people never found. They had each other, and in the wild country, where the rules were different and a man's worth was measured by his character rather than who he loved, that was enough. Years passed. The cabin grew. They added rooms, built a barn, cleared more land. Travelers sometimes stopped, needing shelter or supplies. Cole and Jesse welcomed them, fed them, sent them on their way. Some stayed longer, drifters running from their own demons, lost souls looking for a place to belong. And slowly, without meaning to, they built something unexpected, a refuge, a place where men like them could breathe, could rest, could remember they weren't alone. Old Tom showed up one winter, too old for ranch work anymore, looking for a place to see out his days. He took one look at the cabin, at Cole and Jesse working side by side, and smiled. "You boys did all right for yourselves." They gave him a room, and he spent his evenings telling stories of the old days while Jesse cooked and Cole carved wood by the fire. And when Tom passed peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, they buried him on the hill overlooking the valley with a marker that read, "Friend and brother." More travelers came. Some stayed, some moved on, but all of them carried away the knowledge that somewhere in the wild country there was a place where a man could be himself without fear. Cole grew gray at the temples. Jesse's hands became as rough as his own. They had scars, losses, hard years when crops failed or animals died or sickness came. But they also had laughter, quiet mornings, the solid certainty of waking up beside the person who knew you better than anyone and loved you anyway. One evening, 20 years after that first day in the barn, they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Jesse's head rested on Cole's shoulder, his hand intertwined with Cole's weathered fingers. "You ever regret it?" Jesse asked quietly. "Running? Giving up the ranch?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. "Not once." Jesse lifted his head. "Really?" Cole turned to look at him, seeing the silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the life they'd built written in every feature. That ranch was just wood and grass. He brought Jesse's hand to his lips. "This is what I was supposed to find." Jesse's eyes glistened. "I love you." "I know." Cole smiled. "Been waiting 20 years to hear you say it first." Jesse laughed, the sound carrying across the valley. "You're an impossible man, Cole Hartwell." Cole pulled him closer. "And you're stuck with me. Promise?" Promise. They sat together as the stars emerged, two old men who'd been young and desperate once, who'd risked everything for a love the world said they couldn't have, and found instead a life richer than either had imagined possible. In the wild country, where the rules were different and freedom meant something more than land or money, they'd built a home, not just for themselves, but for anyone who needed to know they weren't alone. And when Cole Hartwell finally drew his last breath, decades later, with Jesse's hand in his and the sound of their family, the lost souls they'd gathered over the years, gathering outside to pay respects, he went peacefully, knowing he'd lived fully, loved completely, and left behind something that would endure long after he was gone. Jesse Carmichael lived another 5 years, tending the cabin and the people who still came seeking refuge. And when he joined Cole on that hill overlooking the valley, they buried him beside the man who'd cut him down from his noose of fear and showed him what it meant to be free. The cabin still stands, passed down through generations of those who knew its story. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right, you can almost hear them, two voices laughing, two hearts finally at peace, because in the end, that's what matters. Not the world's judgment, not the rules that try to bind us, but the courage to reach for what sets you free, and the person who reaches back. Sometimes salvation comes in the form of a stranger with desperate eyes. Sometimes home is built in the wilderness with scarred hands and stubborn hope. And sometimes love is simply the choice to stay. Even when the world says run, especially then, the days that followed established a rhythm. Jesse worked with Tempest every morning, patient and gentle, while Cole found himself inventing excuses to check on their progress. The mare was responding, slowly, but surely. And Jesse was transforming. The soft hands blistered, then hardened. The uncertain movements became confident. The pale skin bronzed under the relentless sun. But it was more than physical changes. Something in Jesse's eyes was shifting. The constant fear was fading, replaced by something steadier, something that looked almost like peace. Cole told himself he was just being a good boss, looking after his worker, making sure the investment paid off. But late at night, alone in his house, he couldn't lie to himself. He was watching Jesse because he couldn't look away, because every day brought some new revelation. The way Jesse hummed while he worked, the gentleness in his hands when he finally touched Tempest's neck and the mare didn't shy away, the rare smile that broke across his face when he accomplished something difficult, and the way those gray-blue eyes sought Cole out across the yard, like checking to make sure he was still there. Still watching, still caring. It was old Tom who noticed first. He cornered Cole by the water trough one afternoon, his weathered face thoughtful. "That boy's special," Tom said without preamble. Cole stiffened. "He works hard. That's not what I meant." Tom's eyes were knowing, and you know it. Cole's jaw tightened. "Don't." Tom held up a hand. "I'm not judging. I'm just saying. Be careful. World ain't kind to men like you, like us." Cole's head snapped around. Tom's smile was sad. "Why do you think I'm out here in the middle of nowhere? Same reason you are, I reckon. Same reason that boy showed up looking like his world had ended. We're all running from something. Or someone." Cole swallowed hard. "I'm not. You are." Tom's voice was gentle. "And that's all right. But that boy, he's not just running. He's running to something. And if you're not careful, you're going to have to decide if you're brave enough to let him find it." Cole had no answer to that, so he just walked away, Tom's words echoing in his head. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. He paced his small house, then finally gave up and went out to the porch. The bunkhouse was dark except for one window, Jesse's window. A single candle burned there, and Cole could see Jesse's silhouette. He was sitting up, not sleeping, just staring out at the night. Without thinking, Cole found himself walking across the yard. He knocked softly on the bunkhouse door, heard movement inside, then Jesse appeared. He'd been reading, a worn book in his hand. His shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, and his hair was mussed from running his fingers through it. He looked young, vulnerable, beautiful. "Everything all right?" Jesse asked quietly, glancing back at the other sleeping men. Cole's mouth went dry. "I saw your light. Thought maybe." He didn't know what he'd thought. Jesse stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. They stood in the darkness between the bunkhouse and the main house, caught in a space that belonged to neither. Jesse spoke first. "I can't sleep sometimes. Keep thinking someone's going to find me, going to drag me back." Cole's hands clenched. "No one's going to take you anywhere." Jesse looked at him, and in the moonlight his eyes were luminous. "How can you be so sure?" "Because," Cole's voice dropped low, "because I won't let them." They stood close. Too close. Cole could feel the heat radiating from Jesse's body, could smell the soap he'd washed with and the sweet hay that clung to his clothes, could hear the slight catch in Jesse's breathing. "You don't even know me," Jesse whispered. "Don't know what I did, what I am. I know enough." Jesse shook his head. "You don't. You don't know that my father, that the reason I had to run." Cole reached out, his hand hovering near Jesse's face. "I don't need to know." "Yes, you do." Jesse's voice cracked. "Because if you knew, if you understood what I am, you wouldn't." "Wouldn't what?" "Wouldn't look at me like that." Cole's breath caught. "Like what?" Jesse's eyes met his, raw and honest. "Like I'm worth saving." Cole's hand finally made contact, cupping Jesse's jaw. His thumb traced the line of his cheekbone. "You are worth saving." Jesse's eyes filled with tears. I'm not like other men. I never have been. The things I want, the way I feel. It's wrong. It's why my father." Cole's heart was hammering so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He knew what Jesse was trying to say, had known from the first moment their eyes met, because Cole saw it, recognized it, had lived it himself in silence and shame and desperate loneliness. "It's not wrong," Cole said, his voice hoarse. Jesse let out a choked sound, half laugh, half sob. "How can you say that?" "Because." Cole's other hand came up, framing Jesse's face. "Because I'm the same." The words hung between them like a confession, like a prayer, like a promise. Jesse's eyes went wide, searching Cole's face. I've been alone 15 years. Cole's thumbs traced Jesse's cheekbones, catching the tears that spilled over, telling myself I was better off that way, safer, that wanting anything, anyone, was too dangerous. And then you walked into my barn, and Jesse's hands came up, gripping Cole's wrists. "Cole, I couldn't look away." Cole finished, couldn't stop, couldn't pretend I didn't feel it. Jesse's breathing was ragged. "What do we do?" Cole leaned in slowly, giving Jesse every chance to pull away. We stopped running. Their lips met gentle at first, tentative, like neither quite believed this was real. But then Jesse made a sound low in his throat and pressed closer. And Cole's careful control shattered. He pulled Jesse against him, deepening the kiss, pouring 15 years of loneliness and longing into it. Jesse responded with equal hunger, his hands fisting in Cole's shirt, holding on like Cole was the only solid thing in a shifting world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against Jesse's. The bunkhouse. Cole's voice was gravel. The others. "I know." Jesse's fingers were trembling against Cole's chest. "We can't. Not here. Not now. But someday." Cole pulled back enough to meet Jesse's eyes. "Someday." Jesse nodded, a smile breaking through the tears. "Someday." They stood there a moment longer, reluctant to let go. Then Jesse stepped back, his hand trailing down Cole's arm until their fingers caught and held. "Thank you," Jesse whispered. "For what?" "For making me believe someday is possible." Cole squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Go, before someone sees." Jesse hesitated, then leaned in and pressed one more quick kiss to Cole's lips. "Good night, Cole." "Good night, Jesse." Cole watched him slip back into the bunkhouse, then stood there in the darkness, his heart still racing. his lips still tingling. His entire world shifted on its axis. He'd kissed Jesse Carmichael, and Jesse had kissed him back, and now there was no going back, no pretending, no more walls, just the terrifying, exhilarating knowledge that he wasn't alone anymore, that after 15 years of silence, someone finally saw him, all of him, and didn't turn away. Cole walked back his house, and for the first time since the war, he felt something that had been dead inside him stirred to life: hope. The weeks that followed were the sweetest torture Cole had ever known. By day, they maintained careful distance, boss and worker, nothing more. But their eyes spoke volumes, a glance across the corral that lasted too long, a brush of hands when passing tools, the way Jesse's face lit up when Cole approached, then carefully dimmed to something appropriate. At night, when the ranch slept, Jesse would slip across the yard, never staying long, never risking discovery. But those stolen hours became Cole's entire reason for existing. They talked about everything and nothing. Jesse told him about growing up in Philadelphia, the son of a prominent banker, about realizing from a young age that he was different, about the terror of his father discovering the truth when Jesse was caught with another young man, about the choice his father had given him: sign papers committing himself to an asylum, or be framed for theft and hunted as a criminal. Jesse had run, taken what little money he had and fled west, always looking over his shoulder, always afraid, until he'd stumbled onto Cole's ranch and found something he'd never had before: acceptance. Cole shared his own story: the war, the loss, the years of isolation, and the secret he'd carried since he was 16, when he'd realized that the feelings he had for his best friend weren't the feelings other boys had. He'd buried it deep, married the girl everyone expected him to marry, even though it felt like a lie. And when she'd left, part of him had been relieved, guilty and ashamed, but relieved, because he could finally stop pretending, could finally be alone with the truth of who he was, even if that meant being alone forever, until now. Now there was Jesse, and every stolen kiss, every whispered confession, every moment of connection made Cole believe that maybe, just maybe, they could have more than this. But reality intruded in small ways. The way the ranch hands watched them sometimes, curious. The way old Tom kept giving Cole warning looks. The knowledge that Jesse was still wanted back east, that someone could recognize him at any time, and the bone-deep fear that one day Cole would wake up and Jesse would be gone. It all came to a head on a Tuesday in October. Cole was in town buying supplies when he overheard two men talking at the general store. "You hear about that reward?" one said. $500 for information leading to the capture of some Philadelphia banker's son. They say he stole from his own father. Cole's blood ran cold. What's the name? Jesse Carmichael. Got himself a poster and everything. They say he's somewhere out west. Probably changed his name by now. Cole forced himself to finish his purchase, his mind racing. $500 was life-changing money out here, enough to tempt even honest men. And if there were posters. He rode back to the ranch at a gallop, his heart in his throat. He found Jessie in the barn with Tempest, brushing her coat, humming that tuneless melody he always hummed when he was content. Jessie looked up, smiling. That smile died when he saw Cole's face. "What's wrong?" "There are posters," Cole said without preamble. "Your father's offering a reward." Jesse's face went white, his hand stilled on Tempest's neck. The horse sensed his distress and whinnied softly. "How much?" Jesse's voice was barely a whisper. $500. Jesse closed his eyes. That's enough to tempt anyone." Cole finished. "Jesse, we need to talk about options." "There are no options." Jesse's voice was flat. "I knew this day would come. I just hoped." He swallowed hard. "I hoped I'd have more time." Cole crossed to him, gripping his shoulders. "Listen to me. We can fight this. We can." "How?" Jesse's eyes opened, and they were full of despair. "My father is powerful. He has judges in his pocket, lawmakers. Even if I went back and tried to clear my name, he'd make sure I ended up in an asylum, or worse. Then we run. Both of us. Jesse shook his head. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. Cole's grip tightened. I'm offering. This ranch, this land. It's just things. You're everything. Jesse finished, his voice breaking. You're everything to me too. That's why I can't let you throw your life away. Cole pulled him close, feeling Jesse shake against him. What kind of life would it be without you? They stood there, holding each other, while Tempest watched with liquid dark eyes. Outside, the wind was picking up, storm clouds gathering on the horizon. When Jesse finally pulled back, his jaw was set. How long do we have? I don't know, Cole admitted. Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on how fast word spreads. Jesse nodded. Then we make a plan. We can head north, cross into Canada, start over. It's not perfect, but it's a chance. Cole studied his face. You'd do that? Leave everything behind? Jesse's hand came up, touching Cole's face with such tenderness, it made Cole's chest ache. I already left everything behind when I ran from Philadelphia. But this, us. This is the first time I'm running towards something instead of away. Cole caught his hand, pressed a kiss to his palm. Then we do it together. That night, they made their plans. Old Tom, when told, didn't seem surprised. I figured it was coming, he said. You boys need anything, you come to me. I've got some money saved. Not much, but... Cole's throat tightened. Tom. The old cowboy held up a hand. You gave me a place when I had none. This is me returning the favor. They would leave in 3 days. Just enough time to get affairs in order without raising suspicion. Cole would sell the ranch to his neighbor, who'd been wanting to expand. The money would give them a start in Canada. It wasn't much, but it was a chance. Those 3 days were the longest and shortest of Cole's life. Every moment felt precious. Every conversation weighted with meaning. Every stolen kiss tasted like goodbye and hello all at once. On the last night, Cole couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to memorize every detail of this place he'd called home for 15 years, trying to accept that by tomorrow evening it would all be gone. A soft knock at his door made him sit up. Jesse slipped inside, closing the door behind him. Cole expected words, expected another planning session. But Jesse just crossed the room, climbed into the bed, and curled against Cole's side. Hold me, Jesse whispered. I need you to hold me. Cole wrapped his arms around him, feeling Jesse's heart beat against his chest. They lay there in the darkness, neither sleeping, just holding each other. And Cole understood. They were saying goodbye to the people they'd been, to the lives they'd known, to the safety of walls and distance and pretending. Tomorrow they would ride out as something new, something frightening and exhilarating and utterly unknown. But tonight, they had this quiet, this closeness, this perfect, terrifying moment of peace before the storm. I'm afraid, Jesse admitted. Me too. Cole's arms tightened. But I'm more afraid of losing you. Jesse lifted his head, and even in the darkness, Cole could see the shine of tears in his eyes. Promise me something, anything, whatever happens, whatever comes, we face it together. Cole leaned in, kissing him slowly, tenderly, a kiss that held all the words he couldn't say, all the promises he couldn't make, all the hope he was too afraid to voice. I promise, he whispered against Jesse's lips. Together, they fell asleep like that, tangled together in Cole's narrow bed, two men who'd found each other against impossible odds, who were about to risk everything for the chance to love freely. And when dawn came, painting the sky pink and gold, they rose together, packed their saddlebags, said their quiet goodbyes to old Tom and Tempest and the land that had sheltered them. And as the sun climbed higher, Cole and Jesse mounted their horses and rode north, toward the unknown, toward freedom, toward a future that was terrifying and uncertain and theirs. Cole looked back once at the ranch, at 15 years of his life disappearing in the dust. Then he looked at Jesse riding beside him, face set toward the horizon, and he knew. This was right. This was worth it. This was home, not a place, but a person. And together, they would find their way. The mountains rose dark against the morning sky as they rode. Behind them, the life Cole had built grew smaller. Ahead, nothing but open country and possibility. Jesse reached across the space between their horses, and Cole took his hand. They rode like that for miles, hands clasped, hearts beating in rhythm. Two souls who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen light. And though the road ahead would be hard, though they'd face prejudice and danger and the constant fear of discovery, they had something most people never found. They had each other, and that would be enough. It had to be enough, because there was no going back now. Only forward, into the wild country where the rules were different, where a man could be whoever he chose, where love, real love, honest love, the kind that cost everything and gave back more, was finally possible. They rode until the sun was high, then stopped to water the horses. Jesse slid from his saddle, his legs stiff. Cole caught him before he stumbled. "How far have we come?" Jesse asked. "Far enough?" Cole's arms lingered around him. "Not far enough? We've got days of riding ahead of us." Jesse leaned into him for just a moment. "I know." Cole pressed a kiss to his temple. "You doing all right?" Jesse pulled back, and there was something in his eyes that made Cole's breath catch. For the first time in my life, his voice was steady. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They mounted again and rode on, the landscape changing from prairie to foothills, the air growing colder, the world opening up before them in ways that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. That night they made camp under a sky full of stars. No other humans for miles. Just them and the horses, and the vast silence of the wilderness. Jesse started a fire while Cole tended the horses. When Cole returned, Jesse had laid out their bedrolls. Side by side this time, no pretense, no hiding. Cole sat beside him, and Jesse leaned into his shoulder. They watched the fire in comfortable silence. "Tell me about Canada," Jesse said finally. "About where we're going." Cole was quiet for a moment. "I've heard there's good land north of the border, towns where people mind their own business, where a man's past doesn't matter as much as his present. You think we can make it work?" Jesse's voice was small. "I know we can." Cole's arm came around him. "We'll find a place, build a cabin, maybe get some horses, live quiet. Just be." Jesse turned his face up, and Cole saw tears tracking down his cheeks. "I never thought, I never dreamed, that you could have this?" Cole finished gently. Jesse nodded. "That I could have you, that I could wake up every morning and not have to hide, that I could just be myself." Cole wiped the tears away with his thumb. "You can, we can, and anyone who has a problem with it can answer to me." Jesse laughed through his tears. "My fierce protector. Always," Cole promised, and he meant it. With every fiber of his being, he meant it. They made love that night under the stars, slow and careful and full of wonder. Not desperate or hidden or rushed, but patient, thorough, a claiming and a giving and a promise all at once. And afterward, lying in each other's arms with the fire crackling and the horses breathing steady in the darkness, Cole felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Peace. Complete, bone-deep, absolute peace. "This," Jesse whispered. "This is everything." Cole kissed his forehead. "This is just the beginning." They traveled for 6 days, following rivers north, avoiding towns when they could, stopping only to rest the horses and resupply at isolated trading posts. Each night, they made camp. Each night, they fell asleep in each other's arms. And each morning, Cole woke with Jesse's head on his shoulder and marveled at how his entire world had changed. On the 7th day, they crossed the border into Canada. There was no fanfare, no marker, just a change in the landscape, a shift in the air. But Jesse must have felt it too, because he reined in his horse and turned to Cole. "We made it." Jesse's voice was full of wonder. "We actually made it." Cole pulled his horse alongside. His hand found Jesse's. "We made it." They rode on, and by afternoon, they'd found it. A valley nestled between two ridges, A stream cutting through the center, meadow grass and scattered trees. Quiet, remote, perfect. Here, Cole said. This is it. Jesse looked around, and slowly, a smile spread across his face. It's beautiful. It will be home, Cole corrected. If you want it to be. Jesse turned to him, and in his eyes, Cole saw the answer. We're home. That night, they didn't build a fire. They just stood together in the meadow, watching the stars come out, listening to the water, breathing in the freedom of a place that was theirs. Do you miss it? Jesse asked. Your ranch? Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I thought I would. But no, that was a place I built to hide from the world. This. He gestured at the valley. This is a place we're building to live in it. Together. Together, Jesse repeated. He took Cole's hand. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. For risking everything. For making me believe that love like this is possible. Cole pulled him close. You don't have to thank me for loving you. It's not a choice. It's just, what is? They stood there as full dark came. Two men who'd left everything behind. Who'd ridden through danger and doubt to get here. Who'd chosen each other over safety. Over comfort. Over everything the world said they should want. And as they finally walked to where they'd laid out their bedrolls, as they settled in for their first night in this new land, Cole understood something fundamental. Home was never a place. It was always a person. It was waking up beside someone who knew every scar on your soul and loved you anyway. It was building something from nothing because you believed in what you were building toward. It was the courage to reach for what set you free, and the person who reached back. This was home, this valley, this man, this life they were about to build. And Cole Hartwell, who'd spent 15 years alone, who'd thought he'd never feel whole again, finally understood what it meant to be complete. Not because someone completed him, but because someone saw him, all of him, the light and the shadow, the strength and the fear, the man he'd been and the man he could become, and chose to stay anyway. That night, as Jesse slept in his arms, Cole made a silent vow. He would build Jesse the kind of life he deserved, the kind where fear was a memory, where hiding was unnecessary, where love could exist openly, without shame, without apology. It wouldn't be easy. There would be hard winters and failed crops and moments when they questioned everything, but they would face it together, and that would make all the difference, because in the end, that's what love was, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of someone who made the struggle worthwhile, someone worth fighting for, someone worth building for, someone worth everything. Jesse stirred in his sleep, his hand tightening on Cole's shirt. Cole pressed a kiss to his hair and closed his eyes. Tomorrow they would start building a cabin, a life, a future. But tonight, this was enough, more than enough. This was everything. In the wild country where men could finally be free, Cole Hartwell and Jesse Carmichael had found what they'd been searching for all along. Not just a place to hide, but a place to live. Not just safety, but joy. Not just survival, but love. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the stream sang its endless song, two hearts beat in perfect rhythm. No longer alone, no longer afraid, just together. Finally, blessedly, completely together. And that was more than either had ever dared to hope for. It was everything. The first week in their valley was baptism by fire and frost. They woke before dawn each morning, bodies aching from sleeping on hard ground, breath misting in the cold mountain air. But Jesse never complained, and Cole never regretted. They worked side by side, felling trees for the cabin. Cole showed Jesse how to notch the logs, how to fit them together so they'd hold against winter winds. Jesse's hands, still softer than Cole's despite months of ranch work, blistered again, but he kept going, kept learning, and Cole watched him with something fierce and protective blooming in his chest. This man had given up everything, left behind comfort and safety and the life he'd known, all for the chance to be himself, to be with Cole, to be free. How could Cole do anything less than give him everything in return? On the fifth day, Jesse sat back on his heels, surveying the foundation they'd laid. His face was smudged with dirt, his shirt soaked with sweat despite the cold, and his eyes were bright with exhaustion and pride. "We're really doing this," Jesse said, wonder in his voice. "We're building a home." Cole came to stand beside him, his hand finding Jesse's shoulder. "We are." Jesse looked up at him, squinting against the sun. "I never built anything before. Never made something that was mine." "Ours," Cole corrected gently. "Ours." Jesse's smile was blinding. "Ours?" That night, as they huddled around the fire, Jesse asked the question that had been hovering between them. "What do we tell people when they ask who we are?" Cole was quiet for a moment, watching the flames dance. "What do you want to tell them?" Jesse's fingers twisted in the fabric of his pants. "I don't know. Brothers seems wrong somehow, like we're still hiding." "Partners," Cole suggested, "in the ranch business." "It's true enough," Jesse nodded slowly. "And if someone figures out," Cole's arm came around him, pulling him close. "Then we deal with it, together, remember?" "Together," Jesse echoed. He leaned his head on Cole's shoulder. "I'm not ashamed, you know that, right? I'm not ashamed of what we are, what we have. I know." Cole pressed a kiss to his hair. "Neither am I, not anymore." They sat in silence for a while, then Jesse spoke again, his voice soft. "My father, he always said that men like me were broken, diseased, that what I felt was unnatural and wrong." Cole's jaw tightened. "Your father was wrong." Jesse lifted his head. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've lived 40 years on this earth, and I've seen real evil. I fought in a war where men killed each other over politics and power. I've seen cruelty and hatred and violence. And what we have..." Cole cupped Jesse's face in his rough hands. "What we have is none of those things. It's gentle. It's honest. It's..." Jesse's eyes were wet. "It's love. It's love." Cole agreed. "And there's nothing broken or diseased about that." Jesse kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of gratitude. And when they pulled apart, Cole saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Peace. True, deep, unshakable peace. The cabin took 3 weeks to build. 3 weeks of back-breaking labor, of hands raw and bleeding, of muscles screaming and bones aching. But when they finally stood back and looked at what they'd created, it was worth every moment of pain. 4 walls, a solid roof, a stone fireplace, windows facing east to catch the morning sun. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. That first night sleeping under their own roof, Jesse couldn't stop touching things, running his hands along the walls they'd built, the door they'd hung, the bed frame they'd constructed from saplings and rope. "This is real," Jesse kept saying. "This is really real." Cole watched him from the doorway, something warm unfurling in his chest. "Yes, it's real." Jesse turned to him, and his eyes were shining. "Thank you." Cole crossed to him, pulling him close. "Stop thanking me. I wanted this too." "I know." Jesse's arms came around Cole's waist. "But you gave up so much. You gave up a life you'd built for 15 years. Cole shook his head. "I gave up a place where I was hiding. This." He gestured around their small cabin. "This is the first place I've ever felt like I could breathe." They christened their new home that night, not with desperation or urgency, but with tenderness, with reverence. 2 men claiming a space where they could finally be themselves without fear or shame. And afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Jesse whispered against Cole's chest, "I love you." Cole's arms tightened around him. The words he'd been too afraid to say out loud finally found their way free. "I love you too." In the darkness, Jesse smiled. "Say it. Again. I love you." Cole's voice was rough with emotion. "I love you, Jesse Carmichael." Jesse pressed a kiss over Cole's heart. "I love you, Cole Hartwell, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." Cole pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I could never regret you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync. And when morning came, painting their cabin in shades of gold and rose. They woke to their first full day as truly free men. Winter came hard and fast. Snow fell in thick blankets, covering their valley in white silence. They'd prepared as best they could, stocked food, chopped wood, made sure the cabin was sealed tight against the wind. But nothing could have prepared them for the isolation. For weeks they saw no one but each other. The nearest settlement was a 2-day ride in good weather. In the snow it was impossible. So they stayed in their valley, in their cabin, in their small, warm world. And Cole discovered something he'd never known before. He liked being snowed in with Jesse, liked the forced closeness, the long evenings by the fire where they talked about everything and nothing, the mornings when they didn't have to rush out of bed because there was nowhere to go, the way Jesse would read aloud from his books while Cole carved wood or mended harnesses, the comfortable silence that fell between them. Not the heavy silence of loneliness, but the easy quiet of two people who didn't need words to communicate. One particularly brutal storm kept them trapped inside for 5 days straight. The wind howled like a living thing. Snow piled so high against the door, they had to dig themselves out. And through it all, Jesse never complained, never showed fear, just stayed close to Cole, finding comfort in his presence. On the 5th night, as the storm finally began to break, Jesse looked up from his book. "Cole, are you happy?" Cole set down the piece of wood he'd been working on and really looked at Jesse, at this man who'd stumbled into his life and changed everything, at the way the firelight caught in his dark hair and made his eyes glow, at the contentment in his expression despite the hardship of their situation. "Yes," Cole said simply. "I am." Jesse's smile was soft. "Me too," I thought. When we left Montana, I thought maybe I'd miss civilization, miss having people around, miss the things I grew up with. But I don't. I don't miss any of it. Cole moved to sit beside him. "Not even a little?" Jesse shook his head. "This is enough. You're enough. We're enough." Cole pulled him close, and Jesse set his book aside, curling into Cole's warmth. They sat like that as the fire burned low and the storm finally quieted outside. Two men who'd found in each other everything they'd ever needed. Spring came like a revelation. The snow melted, the stream ran high and fast, and the valley burst into life. Wildflowers carpeted the meadow. Birds returned, filling the air with song. And Cole and Jesse emerged from their cabin like bears from hibernation, blinking in the bright sun, stretching muscles that had been confined too long, ready to build something more than just shelter. They planted a garden. Jesse had never gardened before, but he attacked it with the same determination he'd brought to every other new skill. Cole showed him how to turn the soil, how to plant in rows, how to water and weed and wait. And together, they created something living and growing, something that felt like hope taking root. One morning, as they worked side by side in the garden, Jesse suddenly straightened. "Cole." Cole looked up. "What?" "Listen." Cole stilled, and then he heard it. Hoofbeats. Someone was coming. Jesse's face went pale. "Cole, what if?" Cole was already moving, his hand going to the rifle they kept by the door. "Get inside." "But now." Jesse's voice was sharp with fear, and Cole softened his tone. "It's probably just a trapper or a traitor. But until we know, I need you inside." Jesse nodded and hurried to the cabin. Cole stood in the yard, rifle in hand but not raised, and waited. 2 riders appeared at the edge of the tree line. Not lawmen, not bounty hunters, just 2 weather-beaten men on tired horses. They pulled up when they saw Cole, hands visible and empty. "Morning," the older one called. "Didn't mean to startle you, just passing through. Saw your smoke." Cole relaxed slightly, but kept the rifle close. "Where you headed?" "North." The younger man spoke up. "Heard there's work in the logging camps up past the pass." Cole nodded. "There is. You boys need water? A meal?" The older man's face softened with relief. "If you're offering. We've been riding 3 days straight." Cole gestured toward the cabin. "Come on up. My partner will get some food together." As they dismounted, the older man extended a hand. "Name's Walter. This is my son, Daniel." Cole shook his hand. Cole, my partner's Jesse. They climbed the porch and Cole called inside. Jesse? It's all right. Come on out. Jesse appeared in the doorway, and Cole saw the fear still lingering in his eyes. But he smiled at their guests and offered them the hospitality Cole had promised. Come in. I'll heat up some stew. As they ate, Walter and Daniel shared news from the towns they'd passed through, crop prices, weather patterns, gossip about people Cole had never met. And slowly, Jesse began to relax. These weren't men looking for trouble, just travelers grateful for kindness. Before they left, Walter turned to Cole and Jesse. You boys got a good setup here. Real peaceful. Cole's arm came around Jesse's shoulders, a gesture so natural he didn't even think about it. We like it. Walter's eyes flicked between them, and for a moment, Cole thought he saw understanding there. But all the man said was, world's changing. Getting so a man can live his life how he wants without everybody having an opinion about it. Cole met his gaze steadily. That's what we're hoping, Walter nodded. Well, you ever need anything, word of advice from someone who's been around. Don't be strangers. There's a settlement about a day's ride north. Good people there, people who mind their own business. Cole's throat tightened. Appreciate that. After they left, Jesse turned to Cole. Do you think he knew about us? Cole pulled him close. I think he suspected, and I think he was telling us it's okay. Jesse's arms came around Cole's waist. There are others, out here, like us. Cole nodded. Always have been, always will be. We just have to be careful about finding them. Jesse looked up at him. I don't want to hide who we are, not from everyone. Cole kissed his forehead. We won't. We'll be smart. We'll be safe. But we won't hide. Not anymore. And true to his word, over the months that followed, Cole and Jesse began to build connections. They rode to the settlement Walter had mentioned and found what he'd promised. Good people who asked no questions and offered help when needed. They met other men who lived in pairs, who shared knowing looks when Cole and Jesse introduced themselves as partners, who understood without needing it spelled out. They weren't alone. They'd never been alone. There had always been others like them, living quiet lives in the spaces the world overlooked. And slowly, carefully, Cole and Jesse built not just a home, but a community, a place where they belonged. Years passed, the cabin grew, they added rooms, built a proper barn, cleared more land for crops. Jesse's hands became as rough as Cole's, his shoulders broadened with hard work, but his eyes stayed soft when he looked at Cole. And Cole learned what it meant to wake up happy, to look forward to each day not because of what needed to be done, but because of who he'd do it with. One evening, 10 years after they'd first arrived in their valley, they sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Jesse's head rested on Cole's shoulder, their hands intertwined. Remember the night we met? Jesse asked. When you gave me work even though you knew I was running? Cole smiled. How could I forget? Jesse was quiet for a moment. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd turned me away? All the time, Cole admitted. And every time, I thank God I didn't. Because this, he squeezed Jesse's hand. This is the life I was meant to live. Jesse lifted his head, eyes shining. With you, Cole confirmed. Always with you. They kissed as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. And in that moment, Cole understood the truth he'd spent 40 years searching for. Love wasn't about who the world said you should want. It was about finding the person who made you whole, the person who saw every broken piece and helped you build something beautiful from the ruins. Jesse was that person for him, and Cole would spend the rest of his days grateful for the courage they'd both found to reach for this life. In the wild country where men could finally be free, where the rules bent for those brave enough to write their own, Cole Hartwell and Jesse Carmichael had found their forever, not in spite of who they were, but because of it. And that was worth everything they'd given up, everything they'd risked, everything they'd endured. Because love, real, honest, brave love, was always worth the fight.